Welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Lee Barrett. Today I'm joined by Show Jumping Hall of Fame inductee Linda Allen and U.S. Equestrian Society co-founder McKrell Baier to talk about USES LevelUP events, a bold new format for equestrian sport that celebrates ethical equine treatment, personal development, and education. As one of the first FEI Level 4 course designers, Linda Allen has been deeply involved in show jumping at the highest levels of the sport. Linda's course design resume includes the 1996 Olympic Games, 1992 World Cup Finals, and countless other top events spanning 3 decades and 5 continents. As a technical delegate, she oversaw equine sport at the 1994 World Equestrian Games, the 1999 Pan American Games, and multiple FEI World Cup Finals. She's also an FEI Level 3 International Jumping Judge and a retired USCF R Judge with experience judging medal finals, equitation, hunters, and jumpers across both national and international arenas. Her career recognitions include a 2022 induction into the Show Jumping Hall of Fame, the USCF Pegasus Medal of Honor, the California Professional Horsemen's Association Lifetime Achievement Award, 4-time Course Designer of the Year in the U.S., honors from the PCHA, and the Chronicle of the Horse. She's the author of 101 jumping exercises for horse and rider. She created the Jump Smart Guide to Course Building DVD, and is a regular contributor to EquestrianCoach.com. Alongside her, McKrell Baier brings deep insight into USCS operations, licensing structures, and the strategic design behind their mission. You can learn more about McKrell in episodes 14, 17, and 22. In this episode, we unpack the LevelUP learning event, including topics like progressive approaches in equestrian education, centering character development and training, the evolving role of coaches as mentors and educators, how to differentiate student versus client dynamics, why the basics in riding are more important than ever, and how fresh event formats can better engage spectators and build inclusive community. Whether you're coaching young riders, showing at Grand Prix, or wondering if equestrian sport can evolve at all, this episode offers foundational shifts in mindset, practice, and purpose. Hear it from Linda and McKrell, 2 voices helping reshape the next wave of equestrian learning. And hey, please support our guests and the show. It takes just a moment to share, follow, subscribe, rate the show, or interact on social media, but it has a huge impact. And with that, let's level up. All right, welcome ladies. Today I am joined by McKrell Baier and Linda Allen, and we are going to talk first about the LevelUP learning event that we just that McKrell here just finished.
No,
I was there in
we're
spirit.
A collective.
I was there.
We're a collective.
I felt like I was there, McKrell.
Good.
So anyway, yes, that we just finished up at the beginning of the month with Albert Warren. If you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would love to. So first of all, I want to say that these 3 events that will be hosted all within the 2025 calendar year are kind of an example of what can happen when you're a brand new agile organization that really gets to figure out what's needed and what's fun to do. Because I think in the equine industry, in equestrian sport, we are necessarily really under a lot of auspices of tradition and expectation, and what's important, what matters, things like that. And I think we all are aware that we're in kind of a new age with horses and horse sport. And while it really matters that we pay homage to all that's come before and try to be as classical in our education as possible, it's also really important that we're not afraid to try new varieties of competition type experiences. The LevelUP series was created really first and foremost in a very selfish way to create a platform for our riding school's students, together with other schools like ours that were struggling a bit to find meaning and value in the current models of horse sport that were, accessible to us here in our local community. And I think that a lot of people are in those situations. So I'm going to speak first of all to what we've just completed, the LevelUP Learning event, which is in terms that folks might be able to grasp, a bit like a formalized judged clinic. So when we think about the way that equestrians often interact, we have horse shows, we have training with our current coaches at home, our riding lessons. And then we also, a big part of our culture is clinics with visiting experts, right? So you only have access to who you have access to that lives in your community, that you have accessibility, you have economic possibilities to interact with, so on and so forth. So what we've always really enjoyed are hosting clinics, because as the normal coaches, we love interacting with our students, but we also love learning ourselves. And when you reach a certain age in your life where the focus is less on your own performance in the arena and more on that of your students, it becomes a really fun thing to learn better how to coach your students as well. So not just how is your riding, how is your horse looking, or how are your students looking, but we really wanted to create an opportunity for coaches and students to interact with a visiting expert, so that it's not just what the clinician is seeing of the student on any given day, but also they're getting the chance to see how the current coach interacts with the student. And what was really being looked at in this event was each individual rider's coachability, ability to improve over a number of days, and really what was the impression of that rider's character as it relates to how they interact with horses. Because I think what a lot of us over multiple generations and over wide swaths of the earth can agree on is that what we think is very important with horses is actually the character developing aspects of working with them. And what we all get very frustrated with is that the sport, the horse sport world, doesn't necessarily always feel like it aligns with the character development aspects of horsemanship and progression in sport and the things that matter to us as the people that are really trying to instill that in young people. Would you agree with that, Linda?
Yes, totally. And I think finally the world is more aware of this aspect of it, and it's becoming more public. The discussion is becoming broader. So I love the program largely for that reason.
I'm
I
so
really
glad to hear
love
that.
the like the thinking from scratch that you
Yes.
did when you came up with these formats,
Mhm.
versus like trying to fix and I'll say fight with and mold what we already have. Like it's
Yeah.
like, and it does honestly when you show the schedule, it's a little hard to wrap your head around. Like
Mhm.
when you don't know, because we're all so programmed with these years of experience of this regular
Mhm.
horse show thing, but I loved the opportunity to watch it and see it in action. It was really cool. I loved that you could see the same high level clinician teaching literally a lunge line beginner at a
Mhm.
time, all the way up to the coaches themselves.
Mhm.
Um, Really cool. Loved that. I thought that was a really cool opportunity to be able to see that range and see, I mean, it totally shows you and you get to see pictures, if you will, of the principles at work. Like it's the
Yeah.
same principles in
Mhm.
all the places, and you get to see what that looks like in different ways. And that you can still be telling a coach at a high level how to improve using the exact same principle you just used
Mhm.
with that lunge
Mhm.
line
Yes.
person,
Yep.
so it's really awesome
Exactly.
to see that. And that makes people, I think, if they can see that over and over, more willing. And some people are very willing, I think, to do this
Mhm.
route. Some
Mhm.
aren't because they just don't get it. but this shows you like this is where it goes. Like it really does go somewhere.
Well,
It
and I
doesn't
think
always feel that way when it's not
Mhm.
always in front of you. You know what I mean?
totally. Well, and I think that what you hit on there is exactly what Christian and myself, my husband, who is from Sweden, we met in Germany at course design school. And when we came together, we were both seeking something not different, but something that would combine all of the information that we had gathered from so many expert sources over so many years. I mean, Christian's dressage coach in university was Kira Shirkland, right? And Bo Yenna, and Jens Fredrickson was his jumping coach. So and I had the opportunity to ride with Joe Fargas and Doug Russell and Albert for so many years. And what we became obsessed with was that we were getting so much good information from so many people that had the ability to boil it down and make it very simple. Linda is the same. When you watch her teach, it's very basic principles which are explained in straightforward language, in a calm demeanor that can be understood by people that aren't even horse people. And this is a little bit what is sometimes, I think, at the root of a lot of our troubles with horse sport, is that somehow we feel like in order to be significant, we have to be very complicated, very highbrow, like a little bit, let's separate ourselves from whatever. And that's in order to gain significance. Like if you speak a different language, or if you work in a very highly technical skill, right? You have this whole language that's unto your small circle. But it's not rocket science. It's just not. The horse functions how the horse functions, the human functions how the human functions, and the challenging technical part is how we either let ourselves be coachable and changeable or not. That's the complex part, not the riding or the training, right? So we have always been obsessed with trying to find a way to bring that joy that we found when we got to work with Albert for so many years, which was like all of the nonsense just disappears. All of the small things that you really don't need to be worrying about, you don't worry about. And I think that that's maybe what you're able to really see when you watch a student on the lunge line, or a rider going, a show jumping course of cross poles, or when you start to put the sticks up. It's all the same thing. And that's really what we wanted to try to capture with this event, because the licensing event, which Linda will speak to, is about helping riders and coaches really know where they stand in the larger picture of things. On an international best practices, scale, where do you sit? And with what skills you have, that you've mastered, how does that apply to what competition you should enter? Because this is a major issue that our industry is facing. Without having the qualifications or qualifying for the classes that you enter, which cost a certain amount of money to enter, the sport can be destroyed. And that's not just because of animal extremists watching. It's because of the culture that it perpetuates, which is that it's only about getting results and moving up, which brings you significance, rather than how well you're doing the thing that you do at any level. So the LevelUP licensing events are about that, helping people know where they fit in the grand scheme of things, not just in the saddle, but in the stable, through theoretical knowledge and taking care of their horses. The LevelUP learning events were something that we came up with simply because we wanted to be surrounded by that feeling again. Albert hadn't been to us in 8 years, and he used to come multiple times a year. We've really been missing it. This is his first time to cross the Atlantic since COVID, and he didn't want to come back, but he came for us and for our kids and for, all the people. Like, he watched one group that had 3 students of ours that have been with us for many, many years, that he's coached for many, many years. And, he got emotional watching them ride because it's the same thing, but it's being done on a really high level for the level that they ride at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you're a longtime coach, Linda, that really means something, doesn't it? To know that people have been practicing what you preach, even when you're not there.
You're describing, I have experienced with students myself where you're just so proud when you're like, dang, you did that by yourself.
Yes,
Look at you thinking
right.
and doing things and all this stuff. I love that. I'll get teary just talking about it. However, the way the horse trainer world works, it kind of ruins your business. When I had the boarding training thing, no, we were doing that normal model of lessons and things.
Yes.
It's like they could take a lesson and work on it and build on it for so long. I wouldn't have to see them. Now, some people, I need to see them regularly or it was not going that direction. And then there's those other ones, man, they take one lesson and it doesn't matter how long we go. I'm like, you've just been rolling that little peanut along and look at it, it's so cool. But on a business side of things, that was actually like a challenge. And I think that's just, that's something to talk about on another podcast. When the lessons are really good, and that's why there's so many trainers, I think, that are so great. Everybody knows those little hidden gem trainers, and they've got nothing because you can give the really meaningful lessons your students can take and roll with for so long. And the rest, the trainer has to figure out how to make that work.
Totally. Well, and that's the thing, right? We have to create different models that work for what actual good horsemanship and education should be rewarded for. Like, does it benefit anybody to sit in the saddle with a trainer 3 or 4 or 5 days a week and be told the same thing over and over again when the student never assimilates it and does it from themselves?
Yes.
And this is, unfortunately, what our horse show culture in the U.S. is built on. And like when my husband got here, he could not believe it, that people couldn't go in. He was like, what is with this conflict there's 3 arenas going. There's all these people and horses. Why are these people not going in the ring? And their trainer's not there. And he was like, what? You don't ever go to the horse show with your trainer in Europe. They would look at you like you have lost your mind.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole purpose now, because people like us on this call and many, many other people, we have to be able to do it for ourselves. The Change Purse does not have funding for us to pay every time we need someone to think for us. Right? And also, we're not even wired to want that. And so I think that it's a very specific kind of student that benefits from this model that we're talking about, which is ownership. The onus of learning is on the student. And it's a funny story because one time, I think it was maybe like the second year that Albert had come to us. And we always had like a special dinner and little awards presentations and things. And I was sitting at the table with him and said, just out of curiosity, like what percentage of places do you go in the world that you teach a clinic and you come back and you're like, wow, they've been working on that? And he goes, 4. And I said, that is an odd percentage number to pick. Like, he said, no, not 4%, 4 people. And you and your husband are 2 of them. That was a pony trainer in Italy and an Italian woman. The 4 of us, of all the people that he influenced over the course of his regular travels. And I was like, why are people not implementing the things that work so clearly, straightforward for every horse, every rider? And I think that's about growth mentality, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is going to be potentially need to be stricken from the record, Tamara. But perhaps it has to do with intelligence level as well. Because our sport is one that plays well to people that don't have interest in learning or growing. And I think that that's really sad.
But motivations are different. To me, we have to take into account, what the goals are of our clients and of our students. And I separate the two because I really think there's a big difference between a client and a student. And to me, a client associates himself with someone who can help them achieve goals that they want. In our sport, and I'm talking largely from the hunter jumper end, but I really think it applies across the board, is we have certain people who come whose goals are to be, quote, successful in the competition ring. And they look for someone who is going to help them achieve that goal of being successful. And what amazes me is a lot of them don't really even have a concept of the sport and what success means. But they buy in very quickly. 2 ribbons on the wall equal success. And the more of those you collect, and the more at the high level, the more year-end high score award things you collect. And it's a very good business model for the people who are good at dealing with those clients, because there's a very clear when they're doing well. But then I think, and I can't say none of them, but I say a lot of them don't come into this sport because of its unique nature in terms of it's the only one where you physically partner with another species in order to accomplish what you're doing. And the opposite, you can become very good and win a lot, depending on your natural ability, how much time and money you devote to it. You can become very good without ever really having that much interest, allowing other people to deal with your partner to make sure that it's ready for you to get on and compete with. But I think there's a whole different set of people who are drawn to the sport because of the horse. And some of them are drawn into the sport without even having that much idea about success means winning in the competition ring. They're drawn to the horse. And a lot of those, then there's a small subset of people who are drawn to both aspects, I think. And, they're the ones that really stay in it, and they go on with it, and they become professionals or near professionals. And they are the students that we deal with. The younger ones are the students. And the students, I mean, to me, a definition of a student is you're learning something with the goal of progressing to the next level, that you want to go from the level you're at to a higher level and on to a higher level. And because of the uniqueness of each, equine partner we have, that never ends. It's not something that you ever know. It's something you're always learning more about, and you know more. And the process of learning is just as important. To some people, it's not important. The competition end isn't important at all. To others, both aspects. And the more you know, and the better your basics become, the more successful those people become in the ring. So that's just my sort of philosophical analysis of our sport right now.
So important, and it's important because of the issues that we're facing from external forces, which I think tend to paint the whole swath of horse-human interactions with the same brush as what they imagine the sort of results-hungry competition set to that the whole thing is like that. And even the high-level competition people aren't necessarily just to be painted into one corner either. I mean, there's always a spectrum. And I think that it feels like the most important thing that we can do for our sport and all the people in it are to shine a light on the things that have historically not been rewarded by competition, right? The basics and the stability of the position and the ability to go in any direction with horses that you might want to achieve or enjoy, or maybe it's just the only opportunity that happens to come your way. because we get so specialized. And I think that this is a problem not just in horses, but in industry in general. When you become too specialized too early, like as an example, little league sports now, or competition travel teams, right?
Yes.
There are whole, like hundreds of thousands of children that only play competitive baseball, and that they play it all year round. They have repetitive use injuries when they're not even to middle school yet. And what's happening is they're honing one set of skills very to a professional degree. Now, they're all doing it together, so that doesn't really even make them more likely to be selected to the upper echelon of sport, because there's so many doing it. And you generally need to have a certain inborn talent to make that level of sport in any capacity. But in the hunt for that competitive result, you're restricting people's opportunities to grow in a lot of different ways. And when you are then a person that needs to interact with a whole different, very sensitive, flight animal that is also very generous and submits itself to humans almost too easily, you end up with a whole population, a whole generation of people that don't get the nuances, that imagine it's only this way or this way. And it's like, that's not really the point. The point is to be flexible. It's to understand the basics very well and stay open and stay learning. But that's just a challenging way to be as a human anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you said, that's a whole group of people, and I think it's important to note that's a whole group of people, and a whole group of those are literally trainers passing it on. I was.
Exactly.
Had my trajectory not changed.
Yes.
And I know as a kid, I was horse crazy girl, and that's definitely where it began.
Yes.
I was started showing so young. I started showing, I guess, at probably 6. I don't remember if I wanted to show. I'm not saying anyone made me. No one made me. I know that. But when it's the only thing presented, do you want to ride horses and go to a horse show? Yeah. And that's just that. And it's generation after generation now. I think had it been in front of you of, do you really want to go compete, or do you really want to go get to know your horse really deeply? I think I probably would have been the type of person to go that route. I was kind of turned into this competitive thing because it's what's put in front of you, Like in the conversation I just had with Piper Clem, we didn't go too deep into this, but she's like, yeah, my parents found a trainer in the phone book and off we went. And I'm like, did you want to do hunters, or is that just who they accidentally called, It's kind of crazy.
That's how I started. Yeah.
Same.
I got a lesson because of what my mother found in the phone book, and it happened to be saddle seat. And and I learned a lot that I apply today from those early saddle seat. But then, because I wasn't every day, I was on my own most of the time, because access to trainers was a couple hours away and commuting was not in the picture. My own reading and studying, and then looking for opportunities to do different things as long as it involved horses. I didn't care what it was. And then ended up, being drawn to the jumper discipline. But I really value the time of being in different types of things too. I mean, and I really valued the time, and at that point, I was forced into getting a lot out of a lesson because it had to sustain my development until I could get another lesson. And you learn, you hear the lesson, but you don't learn the lesson until you do it on your own. And the idea of, always, every time you ride, is you're being told what to do. That's great, but you never learn to trust your own judgment or to really learn that much about your own horse.
Oh, totally. And I think that the way that, because I grew up with the very vanilla, typical horse show, hunter, jumper, whatever, kind of in a mid-sized horse community, not the East Coast, not the West Coast, kind of middle of the country, normalcy. And it was just such an awakening to go see things formatted in a different way. Like, I didn't even realize it at that point. I probably didn't even realize it when I decided to start these different kinds of events. But that's what's interesting, is to see what are the different ways that you can check for a rider's progression. Does it have to be that we have a 2 foot, a 2 foot 3, a 2 foot 6, a 2 foot 9, a 3 foot, whatever they call it, hunter class over the same course? Or could it be about the actual skill sets that you need for these things? Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just to some degree, I think I get bored with the same old. And especially if you see it for in, you know, where I live, I've been in the horse show world for 40 years and I don't see it getting better. There have been a lot of hunter rounds. You hear me? Go around that horse show grounds. And so if it worked, we should have evolved to a far different point in horse-human interactions, relations, the level of sport that we're seeing, the level of performance that we're seeing. And it hasn't happened. And I think that if it hasn't happened in 40 years, it's probably not going to happen in the next 40 years. And so it becomes really kind of a fun game to play to figure out what formats might work as, you know, an alter to, we all have been doing it long enough to say we do know what matters. Basics, well-rounded education for how you interact with your partner in and out of the saddle. Hopefully a trajectory that more people would like to do this as a profession that might sustain them. You know, maybe there's a way for people to attain more students to interact with rather than more clients. We have to try. And so
you did mention it earlier, but I wanted to bring it up again because it was another thing that I really, really liked was the having Albert watch the student being coached by their regular coach. I wanted to bring that up again because I think that's a really great thing for so many reasons. I think that's a great and cool thing.
Oh, the reason why we definitely wanted to include it, because that was not my initial thought, but because it went so well when Linda and Avery watched and then interacted on the warm-up day for our initial event, I was like, oh, this definitely matters, because it matters, of course, for the students. It helps them to settle in and feel a little bit more, you know, in their element. So that's good. But it also helps the coaches so much, because a huge part of what is not a part of our professional training in this country, I mean, I speak as if there is professional training, but a big part of it that doesn't easily pass from one person to the other is the pedagogics of teaching, right? So the biggest thing that Christian and I took away from this event ourselves was Christian says to Albert, "You're never tired after teaching an entire day." And he goes, "No, why should I be? No. It's up to them to do the things that I say." But also, he doesn't explain theory or technical aspects while anyone is moving in the arena. He tells them what to do. And then if there's a point that needs clarification or a question, or to Christian's point, a lot of times, and I know you do the same, Linda, you're teaching a small group of students, but you've got a big audience listening to what you're saying. So it can feel like a lot of pressure to give credit to what you're saying to the peanut gallery. But Albert will do that too, but in a walk break or once he's brought all the students together. Because you can't even assimilate, you can't even hear that information when you're in the process of moving around and trying to balance your body and do the things. So don't waste your breath. Like, so those things spoken from someone that has done it for so long and literally makes a living by giving clinics all the time, that's invaluable to us as coaches, right? I mean, it saves you so much energy at the end of the day. And you go, he does it, it works. I like the results he gets. I do it too. But aside from that, I think the coaches or the visiting educators, right? Linda, like you and Avery, do you feel like it gave you a window into how to better help the riders when it was your turn to give them some coaching advice?
Yes, I think so. And I think as you get a quick idea of, where the different riders' goals are, it makes it easier for you to direct individual people. And I don't like doing large groups in clinics. I just won't do it anymore because I feel like, my job is to offer something to everyone who participates. And in a large group, you always have the ones that you can only do so much, keep them going. And when they're on a horse, and you're always under challenging the top ones. And, and you're pushing the ones that aren't up to what you're doing beyond what they can do, which is not beneficial at all. And with the jumping discipline, you can't just back down the exercise for what people are up to. You're stuck with them being, prepared to do whatever that group is. And you never have a totally homogeneous group of jumping riders. I mean, there's some that are familiar with the exercises you use, and there's others that aren't at all. And there's always some that are on a horse that, for whatever reason, just isn't right to be able to do what you're asking on that day. And it's very unfair to me if the horses, you get the feeling the horse wouldn't do it with the most experienced trainer on the premises riding it. What does a student have a chance with? So, and others are going through the motions and they're good demonstrators, but they're not really being taught that much because they're beyond what the group that they're in. So I prefer smaller groups so that you have the time to work individually and make sure that everyone gets what they're wanting to do. But the point that I feel is very different and very important with this LevelUP program is, I think if you asked any, very experienced clinician, people that work with a lot of different people, if you asked where the weakness was in the riders as a whole, it is their level at the basics. I mean, to the point where you have some competition riders who are totally unfamiliar with very basic things with horses, and riders whose limits are being set as far as their ability to go on because of the weakness in their basics. And I think that's the hardest thing to teach and to make interesting. And I love the LevelUP thing because we never judge the basics in our horse show community. We have, competitions that go down to poles on the ground, but they're all judged against what should a hunter look like, or what should an equitation rider look like, as in one that is jumping around at 3'6". And that's not a fair way to judge starting riders. Starting riders need to be better at the basics, and trying to look like what the experienced rider and horse look like doesn't work. I mean, it's not judging them and evaluating them on the basics. And the other is they're being judged against other people doing the same thing, not against how well they're doing or whether they're improving. And, if they're progressing beyond that level, they don't do it based on their own, hard work and success. It's based on, I need a horse that can jump higher jumps, and then I can progress. And, that's all based on the horse. And where the LevelUP program, because they earn their way forward, it's a little bit more like never having really participated in it, the old-fashioned Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, in that you earn your badges by learning and becoming good at something, and not by against who else is working on the same badge, but whether you're doing it. And I love the LevelUP because it says we start at the basics and we get good basics, and when we have them, we earn the ability to go to the next level. and you can continue going to higher and higher levels. And you're judged off of a basic what should a rider be able to do at a certain point in their learning curve before they go on, and what knowledge do they have of the horse and of taking care of the horse off of their back that also corresponds to that riding level. And if their knowledge is greater than their riding ability, that helps, but they have to bring all aspects up. And I really love it because it's celebrated, the idea that they improve. And the lunge line portion of it, of being able to have balance and have control of your body and be able to know how to sit and how to use your body before you have to interact with the horse, to me is so good for the riders and for the horses. And in a normal program, a lunge line lesson, if one is ever given, is considered kind of a penalty for not riding very well. And instead, it should be an opportunity for learning to ride better. Certainly in the European things goes back to Spanish riding school. You want to get better in your position, you need to specialize on your position. And you can't do that while you're actually needing to communicate correctly with the horse. And it's considered something that is vitally important, and we don't celebrate people's ability to be able to graduate beyond there.
And unfortunately, the current system, I believe, leads people to believe that they are. Like I would have said back in the day, like, well, I do equitation classes and I am checking in on, all these things,
exactly.
and, but it becomes very clear how it is people copying a picture because there is no judging of the basics. You said the basics many times there. Of same thing back in the day. Would I have said I knew the basics? Of course I would. Of course, we had our basics. But there's no horse show with it. There's no judging of it. There's no actual standard to follow. So no one knows that their basics are useless.
Well, and I think but like from the pedagogic side, and I think that this was the thing that always made me feel it did make me feel heartbroken when I finally got to Europe. And I had been going to Europe for a number of years to purchase horses for clients and do the deal and whatever. But when I got to the Aachen school, and Linda can attest to the kind of people that created such an entity. I mean, it's a bit of a unique entity in the horse world, right? And it was understanding like the basics in a lot of different senses in relation to the history of our sport, in relation to what is required for horses and humans to interact and to have a long-term, sustainable, mutually beneficial relationship.
Yes.
And it just like, I still can't put it into words, but it was like I was in awe that I was in a place where the history of horses and the way that we developed riding over these centuries was it wasn't just available, it was celebrated. And I was like, oh, I feel like this is the thing that I always wished that I had in my, but it's sort of like, for whatever reasons, that in this country, it's like, well, you do it just because you can do it and because you're competitive and you want to be better and you want to get your picture in this magazine or whatever. But I never had a clue about what it all meant, like in a historical sense. And it wasn't until I got the opportunity to study course design and start learning about the history of course design and how that related to horse history that I was like, this is actually fascinating. And I don't think I'm weird for thinking it's fascinating. I think everybody that rides as a student would find it fascinating. So why the hell aren't we doing that in this country? It's not like the information is hard to find. So that has really been like I said at the beginning of the call that this was a very selfish thing to do, something to legitimize a group of riders that their trainers don't want to take them to those kinds of competitions. Their trainers don't want to have to do the things that would make them successful in a different arena. But it also, the more that I started thinking about why I love this kind of a format so much, it really made me quite annoyed that a group so powerful and wealthy and with so many resources seems to intentionally not shine light on these things, which the more you know, the better you can do. But if we truly don't care about history and knowledge and all the things that have come before, how are we supposed to get better and or protect what we're doing right now? There's no way it can happen.
While we're here, should we talk a bit about the format of the first event that Linda was
Sure.
a judge for? Because you told us quite a bit about what you loved about the program, but that first event was a little more close to what a normal show might be like. If we want to talk a little about that, just to get a full picture.
Yeah. So I'll give you just a little breakdown of how the days were formatted, and then Linda can talk a little bit about how she saw it from her side. So the LevelUP events are always 3 days. The LevelUP licensing event, which was held in May, the Friday is a day for horses and riders to get used to the facility. Hopefully, when other facilities would like to host this as well, that means that there's no unfair advantage to the home team, more or less, the people that are hosting it, but that riders and horses unfamiliar with the facility, if you will, a schooling day. Yeah. But the judges for the event are watching this interaction, and it's supervised. So if a rider might come without a trainer, that's okay, but there's a professional person in the arena to set a schooling fence for them or give them some helpful pointers or whatever it is. The whole idea is that horses and humans get a good first start at it. The judges get to sit and watch that happening. And then once all the horses in that session are complete, the riders approach the judges and then they have a little bit of a talk about it. And Linda will tell you her strategy with that because I think it worked really well. That's day one. When the riders that are not riding in the supervised riding times are on site, they're having a meeting with the organizers. So like how you would at an FEI event, a young riders event, that you bring all the participants together, you explain the expectations, you talk about whatever rules might be in play that maybe they're not familiar with. Next year, Linda will have a proper trot up and veterinary inspection and all of these, things that you don't get to do even at your big time A-rated horse show. So it's really, the first day is built to be about learning how to be effective at a competition, knowing the rules, having a good schooling session, and realizing how you're going to go into the weekend. Saturday is dressage day. So every LevelUP rider licensing level has a corresponding dressage portion. For the lowest levels, there's an instructor asking for the different movements or figures to be ridden. Then again, after each section of dressage was completed, the riders approached the judges and got immediate feedback. The judges have scorecards, but also there was immediate discussion so that the riders left the arena with the understanding of what they'd done well and what they might work to improve. The Sunday is the show jumping portion. I think it would be really exciting if 3-day eventing facilities in the future would be interested to host, small trials that could easily be the cross country day as well. But the show jumping had a course walk for every level. Whether it was a full course ridden, depending on the level, or a number of obstacles that were assisted with an instructor. The judges sat with scorecards and took notes on all the various aspects of the training. And then we finished with a great big awards. Oh, I'm sorry. On dressage day, when the riders weren't in the arena, they were being tested on their unmounted stable skills. So that was another scoring portion. On the Sunday, riders alternated their show jumping test with their written theoretical knowledge. And all of those scores were taken into account to determine the placings in each level, but also which riders in each level actually achieved a certificate of skill.
I'll just throw in there real quick before you go, Linda, that again, I think when anyone listens to that, my brain does this even, and I've thought about this a lot. My brain just automatically wants to put it next to a regular horse show and compare it. And it's like, I have to tell it, don't do that. Like, stop doing that. Just listen to what she's saying. There's so many amazing opportunities there if you truly put the thought into that are not available at regular horse shows. But if your brain's like, well, how do you, but you're comparing it to a regular horse show. Just stop. Just back up. And think about it like its own thing, and then you're like, oh man, there's so many opportunities there for learning, growth, and being rewarded too. Like, who doesn't want to be rewarded for like being really awesome at their stable skills? Real horse people are like, heck yeah, I got 5 stars on that one,
Yeah.
So,
and and it does really translate into what's seen in the arena, because if you're not mucking out and you don't know the health of your horse, or your grooming isn't up to, eventually it's a part of the picture that is only possible otherwise if you have a whole staff behind you, which again, that's fine.
Yeah, I loved participating, and I came as the biggest student of the whole thing because I had no idea exactly what you're going to do and what my role was going to be in it. So, the first day for me was a very much a learning curve of, what are we going to do on the weekend when we actually need to do this? And I enjoyed it. I watched the warm-up and everything more from a distance. I wasn't in the middle of it, and it was more observation. But what I really enjoyed is I did have the opportunity to talk to, I think, every rider. McKrell, I don't think I missed any.
Oh, no, you didn't miss any. Nobody was going to miss that chance.
They came, I had a table where I could be observing what was going on, in the arena and warm-up area throughout the day. But then different riders came up, and I was able to ask them a little about their background, how they got into it, where they felt they were, and what they liked the most about the program, what they were looking forward to at the program, and how things went. And it varied from a couple of the older riders that, what I liked is that riders participated all ages. I had some that I don't know the youngest age, but they were pre-teens, I'm sure. And we had a grandmother who was the oldest of 3 generations riding. And all of them in very much the same way. They wanted to kind of see where they were at. The more experienced riders were sometimes riding horses that they didn't know. And that, there were riders who had ridden a lot, but their jumping and dressage background was nil. They had worked with a lot of horses, but this whole idea of a dressage test or jumping horses was quite new to them. And so it was very interesting to be able to talk to them. I was really impressed with the riders that rode through McKrell and Christian's program, with how well they expressed themselves as to what they liked about it, what they felt they got out of it with working with the horses. They were able to, explain how they got into it and that kind of thing. I love the level of respect for the horses and love for the horses. It was both. And which, in comparison with the large number of, younger riders, similar ages that I've worked with from traditional horse show stables with good trainers, like very good trainers. I've been unimpressed lately with, the riders not being able to explain even where they're at. I ask them what they, compete in. They can't even tell me whether it's hunters or jumpers. They go in what their trainer enters them in. And whether they're ready to move up or not, they don't have a clue. I mean, and that, kind of it left me unimpressed with their inability to be able to put themselves on a scale of, where they were at in their riding and what they were comfortable with and what they weren't comfortable with. I thought was very odd. Then going on into the competitions, Dressage Day isn't my specialty by any means, but the two of us as judges sat together, and I was more of a scribe for, someone knew more about the dressage, but we talked back and forth. And what I liked is we were definitely on the least experienced riders. I mean, they were still being led and in hand, but they had specific things about mounting correctly, about keeping, their reins, about their basic position, about being able to keep their focus ahead. And I saw wonderful, real basics of where you need to be, of that your horse needs to stand correctly before you get on it. Whether you use a mounting block or don't use a mounting block, making that sensible, being able to estimate your stirrups before you get on, and just doing things correctly, and a lot of pride in the riders in being able to execute those basics. Then later on the lunge line, can you maintain what you had at the walk and trot on a horse that's moving fairly freely? And both of us as judges got the biggest kick. There was one pony that with tons of energy, and the pony would get out and go play, and the rider on the lunge line, when the pony was, kind of scooting off and shaking its head and wiggling a little bit, the rider was laughing and never lost a centered position. I mean, rode it so well, and was so comfortable with it. And you go, wow, I would work with others. And it's like, oh no, I got to get off now. Somebody has to work this horse down so that it won't play because it makes me nervous. And this was the total opposite, and exactly what you would want in a very controlled situation. No one was getting into trouble, but it was real world riding, and not just the artificial, we have to make the horse dumb down one way or another to the level of the rider. And so in all of our scores, we both agreed we need to give scores based on where we would like a rider at that level to be at that level. In other words, and the high scores meant they were ready to move on. And a low score didn't mean they didn't have the right body build to be an equitation rider, therefore got a low score. It was, are they ready to move on to the next level? And we're able to give good scores in virtually all the cases. And but it wasn't being judged according to a criteria of a rider who's, ridden for 5 years and, had the fanciest horses to ride and that kind of thing. It was on, is this rider, would you be happy to see this rider, go on to the next level? So, and then it kept going that way. And then the opportunity, I'm not sure that we started it right at the beginning, but we both asked to be able to speak to the riders. And right when they came out of the ring, and it got very organized. There was another student that was able to take their horse, immediately so they could step off at the in-gate. And we were close there, and they came over and we were able to give them feedback. And started out with a couple of riders, asking them, how did you think you did? Give us your evaluation of your ride. Because to me, that's really important. Because if the rider isn't able to you know, think back and think about, okay, what could I have done better? What was I the most proud of? What was the hardest part? And after we'd done that, I think the word passed around amongst the riders because they got off really prepared to give us some good feedback. And we could, then comment on that and give our own, feedback. And to me, the number of times judging a regular horse show that you just wished you had the opportunity to give feedback to riders who win because everyone else was not very good that day. Do they know that they won for that reason? A rider who, placed way down because the other people, really rose to the occasion that time. And that really, the quality of the ride has so little to do in a regular horse show with how well the individual rider did. It's what did their competition do? And we had no idea who won because we were giving individual scores for individual parts of the ride and then some, group scores on other things. And I think the other thing I really liked is because of the format in the lower levels with riders that you would expect not to be able to come in and execute a perfect whatever the test is. It was like calling a dressage test a little bit, which I think was very valuable. So they weren't worrying about having to learn the test and could think more about riding. But if something wasn't done correctly, they had the opportunity to repeat it. And I'd love to see that at that level of, okay, you really messed up, your ride to the first fence, or you just totally forgot to turn across the diagonal, and there's no way of making it good afterwards. At riders at that level, to me, how well they can fix it and do it, learn from the mistake and really be better the second time is part of evaluating them as, are they ready to go on? Everyone messes up, and it's how well can you fix it? How well do you recognize it was a mistake, but that doesn't stop me. It makes me better the next time.
Well, and I love so much that Linda specifically recognized, and again, this was a thing that Christian and I and the other coaches came away with, that she recognizes so much that highly motivated students are highly self-critical.
Yes.
And I should know that, but I just didn't ever put that into play in my assessment with riders that way, because that format of asking them, what did they think? And then being able to respond to that, it set the stage in a whole different way for the students to be able to assimilate advice and be able to put it into practice, rather than feeling like, oh my God, I already hate what I did, and now I'm going to have to come listen to someone tell me about how terrible it was. It was the complete opposite of that.
I was going to say that as well. I think the self-analysis piece of that, and having to say it out loud, not just doing it to yourself.
And in front of an audience.
Yes, I think
let's remember
so many different directions that is helpful on a horse level, on a personal development level, on
Exactly.
hey, you're beating yourself up, like, let's put this into perspective. There's just so many reasons.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and and I'm not sure if everyone could tell from the live feed, but the judges sat in the audience was right next to the judges. And so the riders approached the judges and had the entire audience looking at them through this interaction, which is like a public speaking nightmare, right? But it actually, because it's tied together with the thing that they really love to do, that they were really proud to do in front of their family, friends, peers, made it a fantastic personal experience, especially because the judges were so astute with how they figured out to interact. was magical.
Yeah, I think, of course, even as an adult, much less as a kid, would that feel like scary and daunting?
Oh,
Of
yeah.
course it would.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that on the other side of it, I would be a better mental health person than if I hadn't done it. Because I am that self-critical type. You know what I mean? And so
Oh, we
Sure.
all
so I
are.
think
Yeah.
for kids to be able to kind of get in the habit of like, yes, I know this might feel very daunting, but it's gonna feel better on the other side. Like that's such
Yeah,
a great
exactly.
thing,
Yeah.
such a great habit to practice in life.
Well, and
So,
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like if we're really honest about it, I think that that's one of the things that is the scariest for women of all ages,
Oh, for
because
sure.
it's very, very easy to feel very judged in this industry.
Yeah.
And beyond that, if you're a woman in a public space, I know Linda and I
Yeah.
told a lot of stories about
Yeah.
situations in which we have been seen as too much or too
Yeah.
strong-minded or whatever it is. There's
Yeah.
always a judgment. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really, really good for young people and older people to have the opportunity. And we're not talking about being overly soft and like participation trophy here either, because
No.
that is not in
No.
any way the way that Linda and Avery approached the situation. They have high expectations, right? And they can see promise in all the riders and really want to help them reach it. And just blowing smoke is not doing that. So it was a very
Yeah.
friendly, but also very real. Don't you feel like, Linda?
Yeah, I think, and like you say, so much of this sport, I think of the challenges of this sport come with the mental and emotional aspects of it. And very few people are in the middle and in terms of having high goals and working hard and being, hard enough on themselves to really progress and being forgiving enough of their mistakes to be able to really learn from them. And, it's a hard road. And I think, and it's especially hard road on teenage kids, preteens and teens, I think have the hardest time with it. And not that the rest of us don't, but I really think that girls that age have a tougher time. I think the boys have the time, but they bluff their way out of it more. But being able to very quickly recognize the over perfectionist, and they recognize it in themselves, and trying to give them ways of dealing with it. They can't focus on their mistakes. They need to focus on what they did well, because that's what they want to do more of. And the parts that they did well should come to mind first rather than their mistakes first. We all know about the mistakes. They don't have to tell us about them. But the parts that they did well, and they need to go back and scope out, their performance and come up with that so that they can do more of that and carry the right attitude into the next time.
Sure. It definitely bleeds over into other aspects of life, right? Like the horses are such a powerful tool and partner.
Yes.
That, it feels irresponsible to not be aware of how much impact that will have in any age person's life. So we try to make it good impact.
And horses are honest. I mean, they convey what they're feeling in a very honest way, and far more honest than most people that people deal with. And still the challenge of becoming a very good rider has to do with finding a mutual language with two entities that don't speak the same one. And that involves conversation, two-way conversation, not one-way conversation, to really work. And I think that 95% of things that don't work in riding have to do with miscommunication. One side or the other is not getting what the other side is saying. And it's usually, very honest. I mean, it's just not understanding the language. And the rest of the problems come as a result of frustration because of this. And on one side or the other, the horse becomes very frustrated without not being able to, do what they're being told for whatever reason, or the rider frustration of the same thing. So, and
I think that's your specialty, isn't it, Tamara?
Yep. It circles back to something I jotted down at the very beginning, and that was when McKrell was talking about, the focus on character building. When our focus is on character building, equine welfare, it solves itself when you work on character building. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When you start to have that two-sided conversation and not just a one-sided dictatorship, so many of the welfare things that we can make ourselves crazy trying to solve, they solve themselves, because now the person's actually talking to the horse and we're actually doing things. So anyway.
Absolutely.
And well-meaning people can treat their horses the worst because they don't realize that what they're doing, how it's impacting the horse. And, I think there's far more well-meaning people that either through lack of knowledge or being told, oh, well, this doesn't really matter to the horse, someone tells them that this is the way it's always been. I had a good conversation with Denny Emerson about, the old ways, the traditional ways, and what's good and what isn't good. And I think you learn from the old ways in order to evolve into better new ways. And hanging on to something because it's always been done this way is counterproductive. And at the same time, not learning from the truths that have been the truth since Bucephalus is setting yourself up to having to relearn everything that has already been learned. So, but I think we are in an age of, if we want to expand the sport, it needs to expand in a way that is open to more people. We can't just make the competition sport the visible part that's the only thing anyone sees, and is inaccessible to the vast majority of the population because of the costs. And the basic costs aren't going to go down because it's land, feed, individuals to provide individual care and attention, whether it's vets or blacksmiths or whatever, can't get cheaper. There's no way of bringing those costs down. But there are ways to participate within the sport without needing to necessarily own a horse, or for sure make the competition goal your main goal. I think if people start out with the basics and with knowledge and with learning everything that a future elite competitor should know and be familiar with, the ones that have the talent and the desire have an opportunity to find ways. Opportunities turn up for people who are well prepared to take advantage of them.
Exactly.
And you never know where they're going to come from, but luck tends to come to the ones that are the best prepared, I think. It certainly doesn't hurt. And to not be prepared to take advantage of an opportunity is the real sad situation to me.
It feels to me like it's been something that's needed uprising for a long time, but really riding schools have to serve this purpose. As long as there's one very good riding school in an area, it can influence, I think, and change the character of all aspects.
The whole area.
If it can be seen and respected really as an institution of learning, and I don't think that it's fair to put the onus of ethics and education in the sporting sector, because that's not what sport is about. Sport's not about education or ethics. Sport is about survival skills. It's about cutthroat competition. That sport plays a very critical role in modern society to make us expand beyond what we would do as just lazy humans. But that sport doesn't really fit with education and ethics. If you look at it historically, people always cut corners for the bottom line of money or for winning. So I think trying to find ways to make riding schools very sexy, respected institutions, I don't think that that's so hard to do. But it does mean that we need to band together and have expectations and standards. And that's what we're set up to do because of finally having a liaison with an international accrediting organization that's been wanting to have an influence in the U.S. for decades. And now they do. So I don't see another way around it. And really the LevelUP events are hopefully created where riding schools can host them. And, you know, people that don't have horse ownership as an option can still be excellent role models for what excellent riding should look like. I don't think that there's any reason that those two can't exist together.
Do you want to, McKrell, get into what your plans are for the next event? What format are you thinking? I know you have another format in mind.
Yes. Well, this is what I've been thinking about lately is, again, we all know that competitive experiences or opportunities to perform, really, I think maybe performance is a better way to categorize this instead of competition, because you're really competing against yourself for a certain, level of qualification. But wouldn't it be fun if we could make it feel like an old-fashioned indoor horse show with some of the special events that happen, not at every horse show, but were kept very special for, these famous events? I would like to be thinking about, might not be possible in the show jumping part, but one thing that we have relied on heavily as a riding school is dressage performances with multiple horses. So pas de deux and quadrille. Oh, it teaches so much real life riding within a controlled environment, and it's spectacular to look at. You can have all varieties of levels of riders with good schoolmasters. That's a non-negotiable. But it's a beautiful thing to watch groups of horses performing. We do it every year at our spectacular event, but we're thinking of making it a competition category for the LevelUP Leaders event. So that the dressage might need to be ridden in, some pairs. Of course, for the ones that aren't ready for that, we have a different variety of or different sort of format. But then I was thinking, Linda, there's a whole lot of format of show jumping classes that aren't used regularly. And I wonder if there are some of those from the old days that you found to be beneficial to a rider's education, to a horse's education, that we might be able to modify for different levels of riders. Because I think I would like to show that, I'm not going to say it's a criticism, but let's just say basic riding on low levels isn't super exciting for people to watch. Is there a way to make it both spectator friendly and promote good riding? What do we think?
I have some thoughts.
Let's hear it.
Jump in there.
And I will say my thoughts are certainly not based off of any kind of old classes or formats in Hunter Jumper Land.
New classes, bring it.
One thing that I think is very cool is almost like a Gymkhana style thing.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can do that if you did them with the education in mind would show a lot. Another thing that I did
I think
after
that
my
would be
100 jumper
amazing.
time that I think was super fun, that was so good for so many reasons that I think you could incorporate it for those lower levels and make it fun to watch, is called equine trail sports around here. But basically, we're talking obstacles, trail
Yep.
obstacles. Sometimes
Yep.
they're
Sure.
more realistic and sometimes they're more silly. Um, but man, when you start to do those, and rather than just survive them and get your horse not scared and turn them into like balance and straightness and put that
Yeah,
into it, man, you can do some cool stuff. And I think that
absolutely.
gives you a lot of opportunities for things to do that are interesting to watch, even if you're just walking,
Yeah.
and it gives you,
Yeah.
it's more. I always say it for the horses, but when you're talking on a spectator thing, it's the same thing. When you do the obstacles, the horse gets the purpose and they can see it in front of their eyeballs. And it's like, oh,
Yep.
this is why you're nagging me.
Yeah.
I get
We
Yeah.
have to
it.
do this thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You want me
so,
to move sideways so I don't hit my foot on the pole. Yeah.
right, yeah. So finding ways to kind
Yeah.
of like, yeah, this is the skill, but rather than just see it on a lunge line or just see
Yeah.
someone walk on the rail, they
Applications,
do a
real
thing.
life
And now
applications.
someone, yeah, and someone who uh, doesn't know anything about horse balance and posture
Yeah.
can start to see
Yeah.
it. They can
See
start
it.
to
Yeah.
see it a little bit
Exactly.
more.
I love that. And it's definitely a trend, right? I mean, in Europe, for
Mhm.
example,
Oh, yeah.
especially in
Yeah.
Germany,
Yeah.
the resources going into creating trail courses is like
Yeah.
enormous.
Huge. Yeah. Because it's
And the
fun.
working equitation thing is cool. So cool.
Working equitation stuff
Um,
is really good.
And one more thought I had is a
Yeah.
little bit obscure, but it's something that I was exposed to when I spent a little time in Mustang land. I own two
Yes.
Mustangs, and
Yes.
there's Mustang shows, blah blah blah. Anyway, we won't get all into the details of that, but something that I basically was forced to do when I was doing a fun little Mustang show series was a freestyle class, which is very silly. Can be, doesn't have to be,
Can be.
can be
Yeah.
very silly. And I gotta say, those, for someone who spent so long in like, give me a course and I'll do it for you, a freestyle was hard and it pushed me and it was
Totally.
very challenging. And it also
Yeah.
allows you at the same time to show whatever you're good at. And
I
if
love
you
that
call it a
idea.
freestyle and think of it from a freestyle way, it could be anything. It doesn't matter if it's obstacles, jumping flat. It could be on a lunge line. You could still do an
I
obstacle
love that.
course with a leader, and it would be more interesting than just watching someone be led.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Some
No, I
things to
love
think
that.
about.
Yeah.
No, I love it
And
because I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not interesting to watch, it can't grasp as many eyeballs to
no,
look at it.
no. And I love the quadrille and how to do that kind of thing. And because there's a lot going on and you can see it. And I would think that you could do, maybe you have 3 pairs that go and they're judged.
Yeah.
But then you do the quadrille to watch and everybody participates, whether the riders being led can be the turning points of where they're working around. You know what I mean? So you try and get
Yeah.
everyone in to some extent. And, and it's something, to practice for. I don't think you could do a competition because I think you'd want to try to have more people in the ring at the same time. And, and I really like that. And I love the ideas with the trail part. I think it's really good. And, your ideas and doing different things, to me, maybe one night is the drill and another night having, a final at the end to have different demonstrations. This person has been working on the trail thing with this horse. They're going to do it. The next one, is doing something different, coming up with different sorts of things that's kind of quick. It's not judged, but it's kind of quick.
Exactly.
And shows other things to be done together with the horse.
Well, and I like
And that
that so
doesn't
much.
include everyone, but just has a few of the riders that can be preparing. And
Mm-hmm.
along that line, I think part of the deal of trying to separate this from the automatic thing people know horse shows have to compare it with a horse show, and it's not a horse show. And horse shows happen, there's 50 of them every week within a
Yeah.
3-state area. That's how it is, and it's one class after another, and they're over with, and you win or you don't win, and you go on to the next one. To me, the 3 times a year is great. 2 of them as the level up, where it's your opportunity to show, where you're at. It's not that long until the next one. Okay, if you don't make it this time, it's not that long. And then the
Right.
one that has the instruction with it, I think is really, really good. And
Yeah.
they shouldn't be more often than that within an area.
No.
So that it is something. I mean, the old days of showing, our training was to get ready for something specific we were going to.
Something special.
And it was important, and it was something, that you weren't going to get to do the following week. And I think that has a lot to do with the self-competition. In other words, I want to have myself as ready as I can be, and, and do the preparation, and then I get to show what I've learned. So I love that format for that reason.
And I really want to create something that feels welcoming in all aspects to the other professionals that are struggling, have imposter syndrome, and we absolutely cannot do horses without in this country. Like, we cannot keep losing more amazing humans that are dedicated to helping horses and humans learn how to interact with each other. And I think if we can make the year-end event feel really fun and welcoming, and encourage more schools, facilities, what have you, to be involved, then we can really, that can even if they just host one thing a year and they want to wait until next October, you know what I mean? Like, do it in their own community. It's like around indoors time. It's kind of fun and cozy. But everybody could get their barn around doing something like that, because nobody is allowed to have near enough fun anymore.
The
horse shows aren't particularly fun.
No, and a schooling show is just another show, whether it's within the barn or outside of the barn. It has the winners and the losers and all of the rest. And the other thing, trying to get it across the barns that, listen, you can have people within your barn that are on different tracks. In other words, you can have the ones that are on the going to horse shows track, and someone else that's more interested in this level up thing. And they're interested in doing, the studying and the learning and the reading and the whatever that goes with it. They're interested in learning about the stable management. And they can get a lot out of, there's a lot available out there, and in doing the riding thing. And that, shipping them off, whether it's with your assistant or a friend or whatever, to do one of the level up things is not hurting your business. In other words, you're able to keep a client who either isn't interested in or can't afford to do the strict horse show track, is still just as valuable and can come home a winner in their own mind and with other people. And you offer different opportunities for people to participate in the horse thing.
Well, and I think it's a real, don't you think, Linda, that it's a real and honest track for people that would like to become instructors in the future, whether that's their full-time job or whether that's something that they work into the rest of their real world life, because there aren't a whole lot of possibilities or tracks for people to get into educating the next generation with real knowledge behind it. It's not what has our setup in this country just doesn't push that way.
Yeah. And to learn from other people that, are really into the education part, not the just going to horse shows part. It scares me that our quote, best riders that, qualify for these Gold Star clinics and things like that. I love that we have them and that they are based on that, but that they have to fill in basic horsemanship in the barn on riders that are competing in some of the top winners in the country is a little scary. I mean, that part of their knowledge is so far behind. And, there's so much more to be covered. And also, in watching the clinics, to see that in the training part, the time is spent on basic things that they can get on and ride in the ring very well. I equate it to the jockey who has a lot of talent to be able to ride the race well, okay, be able to go, but only wins if the horse is prepared by somebody else to be the winner and is entered by someone else in the right race. And I see a lot of our jumper riders who are the same way. I mean, they can get on and they absolutely can win. They're fast, they're quick, they've, have very good instincts. But they would be at a complete loss if someone didn't bring the horse for them to get on that was ready to win. Because they haven't done any of the basic work on the horse either in its early years or even in the last week's preparation. So, it's a one-sided education.
And I feel like that scenario that you painted is exactly what leads to the desperation that leads to the drugging and all the things that we, have talked about it at other times. I'm sure some of those riders would be like, it is not realistic for me to know and learn how to start a horse from day one and do the whole thing. They would say it's not realistic, but then at the same time, if you never know it, if you never learn it, you are going to run into problem solving things where it feels like you hit a wall and have no choice because
you need to buy a new horse and keep it while the before the honeymoon is over, and then go on. And then with the professional that needs the pretty horse that can go win, but the rider's just basically not secure enough to be able to be on it if it puts a foot wrong. You're sort of limited the possibilities to making the horse exhausted, either physically or pharmautically, scares me because I wonder about them tripping and falling down on the rider because they're so quiet. But I guess it's better than having them spook or...
It only works for people watching that don't really know the horse anyway, because I'm sure all three of us here would see that horse and be like, that's not really that beautiful.
Yeah, it's so obvious. Exactly.
It doesn't look alive and loose and it doesn't look the same. That only works because it's catering to that audience that doesn't know any better anyway.
Yeah. Well, you can be better when you know better. And, I have very clear recollections of, hitting that point of frustration and going beyond what is good horsemanship and trying to push horses. I could never buy into and never tried the drug scene, either for myself or the horses. In some ways, I was afraid it would work, in which case I couldn't be proud of a result that came because of that. And then also worrying that you couldn't have the result without using that technique. But well aware of it going, it totally horrifies me that our federation has to put rules in the book about horses collapsing on the showgrounds. And the reason why, it means that they have just pushed it to the point of utter ridiculousness, and that no one has paid a criminal price for horses being ill-treated and suffering the result. But in any case, that is something that, we can't address within this forum. I think it's offering something that is an alternative to that. And I think in the end, for the professionals, you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror every morning and, be proud of not just your result, but how you achieved it. And I think we're trying to do a few more of these trainer seminar type of thing, of bringing people together and, showing alternatives, and that there are very good alternatives for being in the horse business. I don't think there's very many people that get into it or stay in it that aren't pretty much driven. I mean, that they basically come to the conclusion this is what they want to do, whether it's very hard or it is very hard, I think, across the board. It's a lot of work no matter how you do it. And showing alternatives in different ways and having people more willing to work together rather than, keep the competition in the ring. The more you help your competition to have a good business, it's guaranteed your business will go up too in this world. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They think that all business comes from taking it from somebody else rather than building it as a group, building it up within an area. And, and getting more community involvement going. I mean, whether it's the Aachen Horse Show that has, I don't know how many volunteers there. Spruce Meadows built a volunteer base, and they couldn't have the event that they have without the volunteer base. If you had to pay what we pay horse show people to do whatever needs doing at the horse show, that's why you have to charge everybody so much money. But, the volunteers, they have to have a reason to be there. And your supporters, the people that come out and support. And it's amazing how much new business comes from that. And having a welcoming environment for the friend who happens to come along, or the mother knows nothing about it who drives their friend's kid to a lesson. And then, oh, well, this is a whole different world I never knew existed. We shouldn't underestimate those kinds of things.
Thank you so much for joining me, ladies. I loved this chat.
Very interesting conversation. Loved
yes,
it.
This was fun. Yeah. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit tamaraleebarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.